My name's Alan Ballou, and I farm under Keesler Farms Incorporated with my mother and I, also along with Justin and Austin Littleton, and together we farm about 10,000 acres of mostly cotton, corn, soybeans, peanuts, and some rice. Getting started back about 12, 13 years ago, I had a good friend that talked me into looking into cover crops, and one of the first things that he drugged me to was a guy named Gabe Brown from North Dakota, and he was speaking in Springfield, and I was pretty against it. I didn't think they'd work here since we were furrow irrigated, and so Paul drugged me out there to Springfield to watch Gabe Brown and said if I wasn't convinced by the time we got done that he'd come back and he'd quit arguing with me about it. So after the meeting was talked to Gabe Brown, and he was talking about making 115 bushel corn on 15 inches of rainfall and wanted to know why I couldn't make 200 on 50. And I said, well, I thought, well, that's a really good point, without irrigation that is, which we are all irrigated. I thought, that's a really good point, maybe we are missing something here. So I gave my buddy Paul Rink a lot of credit there, and we drove all the way home from Springfield talking about how do we do this? How do we figure out how to make this work within our operation? I won't say that we've done it perfect. We've come a long way, and I think we've improved a lot of things doing it.
My name's Patrick Sire, farm with my brother and nephew with Sire Ag, Orion, Missouri. We farm corn, wheat, beans, and rice. Started doing soil health practices probably 10 years ago, around 2010, and it prompted me to start doing that when we removed a pasture out of cattle operation and started raising crops on it. And I noticed where I had that crop at, there was no stress or strain on that crop that was growing there at that point. That sparked my interest and got me going towards that, realizing that the grass and the cover was a benefit to my soil.
I'm Keith Mayberry, operate as Keith Mayberry Farms. Started farming in 1985. We got started doing cover crops in 2011. The biggest thing that got us into cover crops is we were seeing yield plateaus that we couldn't get over. We looked at cover crops as a way maybe to pick up some yield, as an option of maybe picking up an extra 10 bushel or 20 due to soil health, trying to increase soil health. And we have seen a huge benefit to that, not just maybe in a yield increase, but our soil health getting better and erosion. Of course, the wind blows in southeast Missouri now all the time because we don't have any trees, but it seems like we really helped erosion problems. The water running out of the tail ends of our fields, it's clean looking, it's clear, it's not dirty, muddy water. I think that's been a big benefit.
Probably the biggest challenge of getting into the cover crop or soil health practices was the fear of doing something different that you never had done before. Gradually, you just we eased into it. Get somebody that hold your hand, make sure that reassure you that you're not making a mistake, that you're not going to go broke. You may stub your toe, you may have little bumps in the road, but get somebody that can guide you along, reassure you that it's going to be all right. Most of the people who are already doing it, they're confident about what they're doing, they're sure of it, they're glad to help.
We came back and like I said, we made this big mess the first year, didn't really know what we were doing. So we backed up and started a little smaller and being more conservative and started killing it earlier, not letting it get as big. And cotton production is a little tougher, especially being in the northern end of the cotton belt and trying to fit that into cotton. Wanted to be completely no-till in the very beginning, tried to do that with some success, modifying planters, but trying to keep our beds in shape has been our largest challenge, and kind of got away from worrying about being 100% no-till, and now we're down to maybe making a small, not tearing everything up by any means, not going out there with a disc, not going out there with a moldboard plow, but going out there and just refreshing our beds a little bit, running a little sweep right down the middle and trying to put our bed back together, trying to keep it square on top. We can run our planter and we can still irrigate.
One of the big challenges was trying to figure out what to plant as a cover, because everybody you talk to does something different. And every part of the United States, people that are doing cover, what they do necessarily doesn't work here. So trying to pick out the right mix of cover and planting into it being as that everything here is bedded up and on 38-inch rows for the most part in furrow irrigation, trying to plan into it and manage your middles for irrigation was a big obstacle. And like I say, figuring out what kind of covers to plant, what does good in southeast Missouri, you know, and what does good here may not do good somewhere else or vice versa. So that's been a big obstacle.
The results that I've seen, and less stress on our crop when water conditions are, you know, if you're in a droughty condition, the crops don't stress as much. Anytime we do catch a rain, we capture a lot more of that moisture. Instead of it running down into the ditch, we take it into the soil profile. You know, most of our ground is irrigated, so we'll pass. We may skip one or two irrigations a year because, you know, just because of our water holding capacity.
The biggest one is simply water infiltration and water holding capacity. I mean, we're going longer between irrigations. We're not irrigating as much. And then runoff, even though we're flat, we don't think of ourselves as being highly erodible. We're still putting a lot of soil in the ditch. And cover has changed that dramatically. The water running off the fields, you can go look after a 1 or 2 inch rain, 3 inch rain, whatever, and the water in the ditches is clear. And you go to fields that don't have cover on them or are conventionally tilled, and you've got mud. So that's probably the biggest things I can stand on top of the building and preach about is water infiltration, water conservation is big. And if you're not losing soil, you're not losing fertilizer and other things that you need on that ground at the same time.
We have tried to plant planting into green cover, and that's more of a challenge. It's a lot easier, especially for somebody starting out, is to go ahead and terminate your cover before you plant. A lot of your cover crop has nutrients tied up in it, pulls it out of the soil, so you're not losing your nutrients from the year before. Your retention of your nutrients is really great. Terminating your cover crop before you plant and giving that stuff a little bit of time to break down. We have started spreading some fertilizer in the fall and fertilizing with our cover crop, just so when that cover starts breaking down, we have something there for our crop that we plant to work with.
One piece of advice for a person that's never done it before is take the advice from Gabe Brown that I didn't take, and that was start small and figure out what works for you. When I came back, I didn't start small. I always thought, well, we've got this figured out, right? Let's do everything. Let's let it get great, big, and tall like everybody talks about. Well, that was a bad idea, so don't do that. You got to figure out what works on your operation, what species work on your operation, and how to commingle it in with what you're doing and your practices. The rest, as they say, is pretty simple. If you can get the crop established, the rest of it will. That's where the great part of this deal is the best is yet to come. Getting the crop established has probably been our biggest challenge.
Start with a bean crop. Follow your beans planting into your cover crop. That seems to be the easiest way to make that transition. And also talk to somebody. Get somebody that's going to reassure you. You know, you think it's not going to plant right, or it's not going to work all right. Get somebody that'll guide you along.
I think my biggest advice to somebody getting into cover crops would be to start on a small scale and plant maybe just cereal rye or something simple, no more than a 1 or 2 seed mix, till you kind of figure out how to handle it. But don't quit. Use it, keep doing covers in the same spot, because it's not just a 1 year walk out there and see, wow, this is great. You do see a few benefits the first year, but it's that year 3 through 5 is when things really start coming into play. Tilth of the soil is a big thing. After year 5, the soil is more mellow. You don't have the compaction issues because the cover crops are working for you.